Hey, what's up, everybody? Sorry, little technical difficulties. Welcome to this Geek Bites episode here, spoiler reviewing episode 5, season 3 of the Bad Batch. Here, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies. Hey!
We're excited to be getting into this episode here. This one is called The Return. Of course, last week, Michael and I did the review for the Bad Batch episode 4 last week. Shannon McClung joining us. Michael out of commission tonight, so not able to join us. So it'll just be the two of us shepherding you through. You can call us the Hunter and Crosshair of this review for sure. Maybe Hunter and Wrecker, probably more correct for that one. But this one's written by Amanda Rose Munoz, directed by Brad Rao, Nathaniel Villanueva, and Shannon, this is an interesting episode because we've got an ice worm when we just finished watching a bunch of sandworms here for Dune Part 2. So this one's seeing Omega trying to bring Crosshair and Hunter back together with her own inimitable way, and Echo showing up here as well. So the gang's all back together, although there are some fractures in these relationships. Hunter and Crosshair doing the man thing where they kind of just look at each other, give each other bitchy looks instead of actually talking about their feelings. Then, as I said, we go to this planet. We've got this ice worm or snow worm, and that all leads to all of them coming together and Echo saying, hey, at least we didn't spill any blood this time. So your thoughts overall on this episode here as we come out of these 4 episodes and jump into this 5th episode of season 3?
Completely satisfying. I really enjoyed this one. I mean, there was this sort of a filler episode before they get to Tantus. I mean, a little bit, but this was a filler episode with character, and I think this show is the strongest when we get to focus on those big kind of character moments, and everything that happened between Hunter and Crosshair was awesome. Like it was just really, really enjoyable. Awesome getting Echo back. Seeing, Crosshair trying to get his groove back, putting on the old armor. Yeah. He's got a little bit of the, the shaky hand. He's got some yips right now. I was just really, really happy with it. And watching the resolution at the end, how Crosshair is actually the one who extends his hand. I was just like, I was super satisfied with this one in terms of like a filler episode. Yeah.
I mean, did you think that at the beginning it was a bit of a dream sequence? Because everything is just so perfect, right? They're on the island of the planet of Paboo. Omega gets up with the the birds singing everything. She gets her breakfast, comes down. Crosshair's not in there, and he's out there shooting, trying to practice. We get AZ, who survived clearly what he was involved in season 2 there, and he is holding those fruits or whatever those food is for them to shoot. And then Crosshair and Omega have a bit of a back and forth about how she's saying, you're going to have to talk to Hunter at some point. You know how it is, Shannon. When the dudes fight, it's pouting. It's somebody gets out of that situation quickly and all of a sudden discovers they're like getting up earlier in the morning than everybody else and goes and walks out on their own because they're not ready to have that conversation. Got the hand shaking. And then eventually, and we see Batcher being like a really now starting to become a part of Crosshair's, collection of people that like him. And then that ends up with them ending up back at the ship. So what do you think of this opening here, where it felt like it was a bit of a dream sequence, but it actually was what was going on here? Did you like the way this was all handled? And they were setting up the emotional issues between Hunter and Crosshair.
I was curious where this episode was going to start based off of where the last episode ended. Because that probably could have been like literally picking up right where they left off. Yeah, that could have been some fun stuff.
Yeah.
To watch. I didn't necessarily think it was a dream sequence. I thought that they are either going to pick up right where we stopped, or it's going to be like Omega's happy to be home.
Right.
I mean, literally waking up with birds chirping, getting to see her 2 big kind of 2 little brothers. Yeah. It was just really, really nice. And the thing that I love coming out of that last episode is the bond that Omega and Crosshair have made. I mean, Crosshair has got no allies, and it's interesting to see the way Omega has sort of ascended amongst, especially with Wrecker, like Wrecker saying Omega trusts him. That's good enough for me. Right. Whereas Hunter, being the skeptical leader of this group, was like, this guy tried to kill us. So, and granted, time has passed, and
Yeah.
that like that message that he sent that Hunter didn't use the information.
Right.
Um, but I thought it was a really really great opening, and kudos to AZ for essentially doing a little William Tell action, holding one of these things up with a guy whose aim is not as strong as it used to be. I thought that was really really funny. It's like, well, yeah, he's a droid, but I mean, you can still damage him if he right between the eyes, right in the old processing unit.
Right. Well, yeah, I like that too. And look, everyone is serving their roles, right? Wrecker is the one who is, like you said, telling Hunter, I got no problem with Crosshair because Omega's cool with it. And then Hunter's the one, or Wrecker's the one who brings the armor out, his old armor, Crosshair's old armor out to him. See if this still fits, this kind of thing. So he's not going to say you're back in with us, it's totally cool. Because he's certainly not going to have the emotional vocabulary to have that conversation, but his way of standing up for him against Hunter and his way of giving him the armor, that's his way of saying you're back in with us and it's okay, bygones be bygones. Certainly Wrecker, whose name is Wrecker and has wrecked some shit in the past, probably has a bit more grace and forgiveness for Crosshair than maybe Hunter, because Hunter has other things to consider. We even see later on when they make the decision to go to Barton 4, which they have that conversation there around the table with the pad that they have there from Nalase's pad. When they are packing things up after Hunter tells Omega that they're going to split up the crew to go do this thing, you can see that it is Crosshair who understands why Hunter's doing what he's doing. Omega's not happy about it, but Crosshair's the one out of Hunter's earshot telling Omega, he's doing this because he cares about you. He understands. And so you see that he's sliding back into his role slowly but surely as part of this crew. What do you think of the storyline of them going to Barton 4 because they want to get more information off this pad? And this happens to be the place where Crosshair killed the Imperial officer because the Imperial officer killed the clones Mayday, Hext, and Veach. Did you like the symmetry of that when we look at that episode from season 12, The Outpost, connecting back into this episode? The place where he broke from the Empire is kind of the place that's going to inspire him getting back together with his crew there, the Bad Batch. What did you think about that storyline?
Yeah, I think the symmetry is great. Also, this is the type of mission that you need your characters to go on when you need to get them on the same page. Your bad guy, it's not even really a bad guy, it's an antagonist. I mean, like this thing's just an animal that is doing what it would instinctually do.
Yeah.
But this is the type of mission that you needed. You have those ups and downs with the two of them where they're trying to get on the same page. You can tell they want to trust each other, but so much has happened that it's like, this is not going to be an easy journey. But everything about that compound, about how it's like, they thought it was sort of defunct, and then it was like, why did they leave? Like, did you bring us here on purpose? Like, you're not necessarily giving us to the Imperials, you're giving us to something worse potentially.
Right.
I thought everything worked really really well.
Yeah. And we see this sequence here where Crosshair walks in, where he killed Lieutenant Nolan, and he sees the helmets of the clones that have died, right? From Outpost, right? How he tossed them aside, Lieutenant Nolan did, and didn't give two shits about their deaths, which caused Crosshair to finally snap and kill an Imperial officer. And then we see Crosshair putting up the helmets. Very similar, not necessarily the same thing, but very similar to when we see Ahsoka see all the helmets at the end of Clone War season 7, seeing all those helmets perched up as an honor to those fallen clones there. So I had that feeling when he was putting the helmets up on that. What did you think of that scene, man? What did that do for you?
Beautifully done. And this is the type of action that Hunter kind of oversees, or is kind of peeks in on.
Yes.
This is the type of thing that is not just demonstrating to the characters, but it's demonstrating to the audience that this guy has turned a corner.
Right.
And you see the gentle reverence that he's placing these things on. I mean, because those, this is essentially their tombstones.
Yeah.
That he's putting up. So I thought that was beautifully done. I mean, I would say most of the episodes I want to say most, all the episodes this season I have been incredibly happy with. And
Yeah.
you know, you can make the argument that Hunter and Wrecker with the younger regs, it's like a little bit of a filler, but it was still, I still thought it served a nice purpose and setting the stage for us to meet those regs again. But I thought that was a really well written, well directed moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like in season 2, you didn't have to look too hard to find issues with some of the episodes, right? And so far, 5 episodes in, I would agree with you. This has been a stellar season. And yes, you could nitpick stuff, but you have to really look for it, as opposed to it being overt like it was last season. This is something you have to kind of look for and maybe say, okay, maybe like you could nitpick the fact that they didn't have any kind of conversation. Like we immediately jumped into the next day or a couple of days later with her waking up on the ship. Like you wanted to have the continuation of that scene because that ended so well, episode 4. You wanted to see what Crosshair said that allowed them to get on the ship and what have you. But we skip over that because we want to focus on bringing them back together. Echo showing up and having that nice moment and hug with Omega, and Crosshair, who's still, a bitter bitch sometimes, going like, oh, you don't expect a hug from me, and so trying to stand his ground and be defensive because that's his defense mechanism. That's what he knows how to do to keep himself distant from everybody. But we see throughout the episode as that slowly starts to erode because he has to confront his feelings about the situation with what happened with him and the other clones. And so initially we have this battle here. Let's go forward in the episode. We have this battle between Hunter and Crosshair about the anger here between them, and Hunter accuses Crosshair of hiding information. Crosshair eventually reveals that he killed the Imperial officer, but then you have Crosshair calling Hunter out, going, you're mad because you ignored the message, and all the shit that happened on Tantus happened because you ignored the message, and you're mad that I was part of the reason she got out of there, and that frustrates you. And you saw him clenching his fist. I love that close-up on that. This was going to come to blows, as Echo has said. There's been blood in the past. So we were about to get into it, and then the snow worm hits and all of the sensors and all of that stuff that you do in one of those filler-type episodes comes on, which I think is fun, is well designed. Love the design of that creature, but it was more about the emotional story here. And then after they handle the creature, those two kind of staring at each other without saying a word and nodding at each other, kind of realizing, okay, we need to put our ship behind us. What did you think about all of that sequence before we get to the final couple of scenes here?
What's really great about this entire section that you were referencing, especially between Hunter and Crosshair, is all these characters, with the exception of Omega, are voiced by one guy.
Yeah, dude.
This is all Dee Bradley Baker. I mean, and you watch the Clone Wars, you see all the different clones that he voiced, and they all sound kind of the same. Like there might be some different inflections here and there, but for the most part, they're supposed to sound the same.
Right.
These are unique individuals with their own inner life, and within that inner life, you can sense that change happening in Crosshair. Like less so when he and Hunter are arguing. You do hear that raspy reptilian quality that he has.
Yeah.
But then when you hear him with Omega, he pulls back on it to a degree that he almost sounds like Tech. And and I don't, and that's not a ding on the performance. I think that is absolutely intentional. That Crosshair is I mean, he's not going to replace Tech because they had different qualities, but hearing that slight hints of how Tech used to speak, just in his tonal quality, I think is absolutely intentional and really, really nice. And I think going forward, we will hear less and less of that trademark, raspy, slithery voice that is sort of his trademark. And I think we're going to hear a more even-keeled delivery from Crosshair.
Yeah. There's a little bit of symbolism there with the snow worm because it's coming from above to burst through and, show and probably devour them, as sometimes emotions can do and unresolved feelings can do. And it forces Hunter and Crosshair to work together, right? Because Crosshair puts down his rifle to help Hunter out of that hole that they've built to trap that creature behind the sensors and stuff. So you see that he does make the effort here. And we see, and then we see them, Hunter. Oh, so we see Echo and Wrecker looking over the horizon, and here they come, Crosshair and Hunter walking over the horizon with Batcher, who has given, has been kind of affectionate with Crosshair after they survived this thing with the worm. It's WYRM, so I'm saying it that way. And then Wrecker runs up and hugs them both, which is a really sweet moment. And then Omega's kind of standing there marveling it, as a female clone would do, watching a bunch of clone bros, try to hug it out, not understanding how emotionally repressed even male clones can be. And then having Echo chime in with the line of the episode, in my opinion, is, there they go. They figured it out. At least there wasn't blood this time. That's progress, which I thought was a great. And then he tells Omega, Omega feeling guilty that she should have done more. She wanted to save the clones. But then he tells her, look, you did what you could, which was to get out of there. You did what you're supposed to do, which is to get out of there. And we're giving us a chance to go back and get these clones. And the information we got is just medical information, but it gets us one step closer, or a few steps closer, to finding out where Tantus is. And so what do you think of these final scenes here, man? It seems like they're all back together. Doesn't mean they won't bicker, but it seems like they're all back together now. Were you surprised that they put the crew back together within 5 episodes?
No, I'm not surprised. No, I'm not surprised that the crew is back together. The inclusion of Crosshair is the big one.
That's what I'm thinking. Was that surprised that it happened within 5 episodes?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could see that on the horizon. I mean, pretty much when they are brought back together, because I don't know how many episodes this season is. I feel like
16.
Oh, so it's the same as the previous 2 seasons. Maybe it depends on how much story they have left to tell. And I think that's, I don't want to call it a flaw of the show, but in the first 2 seasons, when we would get those big arcs.
Sorry, 15.
Those were always fantastic.
15. Sorry, about 15 episodes. Sorry, go. You go.
So ahead. One less. That's still a lot, because when you focus on those big arcs, that really deal with the Bad Batch, less sort of adventure of the week episodes, the audience does get very emotionally involved. I mean, these characters were introduced in the last season of Clone Wars. I mean, it's not a shock that, like, I'm curious, if it was a chicken or egg situation, like, we've got these characters, oh my gosh, they would be great for a show, or like, hey, we've got another show, let's introduce them in the last season of Clone Wars.
Right. But
when they are in their kind of main arcs, and they are doing that kind of less adventure of the week, I think that's where the show really, really shines. And obviously, you in terms of like being a writer, like, you want as many episodes as you can get, because that's your job. But in terms of the quality of storytelling, though, it's not that the adventure of the week episodes are bad, it's that the other ones with the main arcs are just so good. And like, I hope going forward that we have less adventure of the week, because I feel like this story was good enough. Like, okay, this was a good, the band is back together.
Right.
Let's head out for that one last ride that this season is going to be. So I was a little surprised at how quickly Crosshair was brought back in. Even though we could kind of see, like, that was on the horizon for a while.
It was heading toward that direction.
But now that they are back together, I hope that it's all. I hope it's just full steam ahead at this point.
I'm looking forward to that, because clearly Tantus is the overarching thing that they're trying to get to here. So we'll see how many episodes it goes before they finally get there, as the season goes along. But I will say this: I thought a couple of things here that I really enjoyed about this episode. And I know some people pointed out the Ice Vulture thing showing up. Just like the Ice Vulture showed up in the Outpost that episode from last season. But I like that, Michael said this, you said this, I've said this. The Crosshair storyline is maybe the best storyline in Bad Batch over these 2.5 seasons so far. And this confrontation of trauma, like, all of the clones have trauma, and this ending conversation between Hunter and Crosshair about, like, Crosshair saying, like, I've done some terrible things, I've some things I had to do in the past for the Empire. I thought I was doing I thought I'd made the right choice, I thought I was on the right side of things. and Hunter and him like feeling really apologetic, Crosshair, like essentially trying to surrender his pain to Hunter, and Hunter being like, it's okay, we get it, things happened and what have you, but we move on together, and that's what's important here, right? And so to me, it echoes what has been something that I've really enjoyed about the Crosshair storyline, is essentially the military PTSD trauma aspect of it all, that's bubbling under the surface, sometimes popping up really overtly, but usually bubbling on the surface of how Crosshair is dealing with all of this, right? And we see they have all these facial scars on each of these. So all of the clones have gotten more and more damaged as the show has gone along. And you see it both internally and physically. And so you see this with Crosshair at the end. And I think about some veterans, our military veterans who've suffered PTSD, who've suffered and gone through wars. And clearly, as Crosshair is talking about the Empire betraying him, and he betrayed the Empire after they betrayed him, it brings to mind Vietnam veterans. It brings to mind veterans of wars who blamed the government for doing certain things that have screwed them over. And so you saw shades of that, I think, lightly touched upon here in these exchanges between Hunter and Crosshair at the end, which I really enjoyed. And I like that we had a Barton 4 episode last season where Crosshair left wrecked with questioning his entire belief system. And he comes back here. I like the full circle of him coming back here to start to put things back together, not only with his crew, but within himself. And I kind of like that. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't have thought of it the way that an actual vet like yourself would think of it. That, getting to see sort of, that those real world comparisons. I mean, what we're watching, for the most part, at least until trying to replicate the blood for Palpatine, they are. The Empire looks at them as things.
Yeah,
they're not people.
Numbers.
They're things.
Yeah,
and they have served their purpose. It's like a phone. Like this phone is done. I'm going to go get the new phone. The old phone, we're just going to toss it aside. Right. And I would have to imagine. I mean, my father also served, but I have to imagine folks that do exit those kind of wartime scenarios, that's coming back with that PTSD, coming back with that trauma, that there is that feeling there, or rather that there can be that feeling of just being tossed aside because you're no longer a priority, you're no longer useful, so it doesn't behoove us to do anything for you. Right. I mean, that's very well put, Johnny.
And I love that. And thank you, man. And I love that Omega is the one that is leading with love. And right, what a majority of our military veterans felt coming back from some of these wars is, especially the Vietnam War, was rejected by society, looked down upon by society, and all they wanted was to be accepted back into the world and loved for what they experienced at a young age that no one should be seeing at those ages. And I think what Omega serves that purpose of in this show is to lead with love constantly. That's why she wants to go back and get those clones, because she sees them as her family, as her people. And so Crosshair is a part of that. And I love that that's what is changing Crosshair. It's not the anger or the frustration or the fights or the killing. It's the love from Omega that is pushing him to resolution with Hunter, pushing him to feel like he's back with the crew, accepted that she's got him, she's got his back. And I think that's an important thing to deal when you're dealing with someone who's dealing with that kind of trauma, no matter what kind of trauma it is,
Well, and that line that you referenced already, I mean, I feel like the specific line was, I thought I was doing what a good soldier should do.
Yeah.
Which that was the order. Was a good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders. And when you think about from the perspective of the clones, of having this thing inside your head, repeating again and again and again and again and again, and I mean that I thought that was such a great callback to the actual order from season, well, I mean, I guess from season, the end of Clone Wars. But I thought I was doing I thought I was doing what a good soldier would do. I mean, that's just a great piece of writing. Yeah,
and the behavioral trip is symbolic, because that's when, having served, when they get you, that's why they like to get you young. They put all that stuff inside you so that you're more impressionable when you're young, so that you know how to react in war, you know what you need to do in war, but they don't teach you how to deprogram yourself from that once you get into that mode. And I think that's what a lot of people suffer with coming out of wars or coming out of serving in the military. And so I like that is kind of low-key symbolism working through all of these seasons of the Bad Batch with the character of Crosshair and the other characters as well.
Do
All
you
right,
think kind of looking, sorry, I just had one
please.
more question to
Yeah.
you as a vet. Seeing how the show is kind of panning out, do
Yeah.
you feel like in earlier seasons that's something they could have leaned on more heavily?
Yes, but I also know that Disney and Star Wars likes to present these issues, but they don't really like to dive deep into these issues. And I can understand that. It's probably not the forum for something like that. And it can get sticky once you get deeper into that kind of stuff. So I think it's there for the people who want to notice it and pick up on it, but it's not overtly there, which allows that to be something that the people that do pick up on kind of respect and admire, that they're even putting that in a show like this. And so I think that's the approach, that's the smart approach. Whereas Falcon and Winter Soldier are bringing up the racism and all of that, the institutional racism, they touched on it, but they didn't really dive deep into it. And I felt like if you're going to present something that overtly, you're gonna have to explore all the tentacles of that a little bit more thoroughly than they did on that show. So I kind of respect and admire the way they're doing it on the Bad Batch, to be honest. So yeah, I love it. No, honestly. Any final words on this? The music cues, anything, or are we good to go on this one?
No, I mean, great music at the opening, as you know, that kind of that twist on Omega's theme.
Yeah.
As she wakes up at home, like, I thought that was really, really well done
with her doll. Yeah, which is great. All right, well, there we go. That's our spoiler review for episode 5 of the Bad Batch season 3 here for the special episode of the Geek Bites. Thank you all so much for joining us. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies. On Instagram, at _geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow the absent Mr. Vogel, who's out getting actual Geek Bites, BITES, because he's out having dinner. It's at MKToon. If you would like to follow the very present, the very real Mr. Rocha, it is at the Rocha Says.
There you go. And of course, please remember to subscribe to the channel down below, hit the bell button, leave your comments about the things we talked about. We also have the podcast feed. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe to the podcast feed. We've gotten better help. We've gotten HelloFresh as sponsors for our podcast of the Geek Buddy. So we appreciate them madly, and we want you to patronize them as supporters of the Geek Buddies, but also subscribe to our podcast so we keep our numbers going up, which will inspire more and more sponsors to come on to the show. We would appreciate that madly. All right, for my co-host Shannon McClung, I am the Outlaw John Rocha. Y'all take care of yourselves. Be well, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of the Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies.